Flashing red and blue lights cut through the rain-drenched night, their reflections warping across the wet pavement like a scene from a twisted dream. The wail of sirens had faded, replaced by the sporadic crackle of police radios as two officers stepped out of their patrol car, scanning the dimly lit street for the source of the disturbance. And there she was, Lydia, the self-proclaimed ruler of the HOA, my personal nemesis, standing smack in the middle of my driveway. Her rain-soaked blouse clung to her, arms crossed, eyes burning with self-righteous anger. Her whole body trembled, the weather from fury or the cold, I couldn't tell. She jabbed a shaky finger at me, her voice piercing the night. "Arrest him," she screeched, loud enough to flip on a few porch lights nearby. "This man refuses to follow community rules. His generator's a public nuisance, and it's destroying our neighborhood." I leaned against my garage, arms folded, watching the absurdity unfold like I was a spectator at some cheap comedy show. The officers, clearly unimpressed, shared a weary look. The older one, a stocky guy with graying hair, sighed and turned to me. "Sir, we got a noise complaint. Mind telling us what's going on?" His younger partner, a sharp-eyed rookie, eyed the humming generator next to my garage. I smirked and nodded toward it. "Officer, do you know what this thing actually powers?" The younger cop tilted his head, curious. Right on cue, his radio crackled. He glanced at it, and his face shifted from mild interest to something more serious. His eyes flicked between the generator and the radio as realization hit. "Hold on," he said, his voice faltering. This thing's powering our dispatch system." Lydia's face went pale, like she'd just bitten into a sour lemon. I sighed, tightening my arms. "Yeah, it is." Weeks earlier, when the HOA-me-owned little council of petty tyrants declared war on my generator, I'd seen this coming. I live in a suburban neighborhood where everything, from your mailbox color to the height of your grass, is policed by a group of bored retirees with too much time on their hands. Problem is, I don't play nice with dumb rules. I'm a former military engineer turned private contractor, and my knack for emergency infrastructure has made me a quiet hero around here when things go bad. When a storm kills the grid, my generator can keep a whole block running. When the local clinic loses power, my setup keeps them going. So when Lydia showed up at my door, clipboard in hand and a smug look on her face, I knew trouble was brewing. "Your generator," she'd started, adjusting her glasses like some cartoon violin. That's our noise ordinance. I'd sighed. "Lydia, I've told you it's within legal limits, and it's essential. You know how many people depend on it." She'd wave me off, lips pursed. "Not my problem. The HOA has rules to protect our community's peace." I'd nearly laughed. Peace? In a neighborhood where kids scream all evening and lawnmowers buzz at sunrise? "What do you want me to do?" I'd asked, already knowing her answer. "Turn it off. For good." I'd shaken my head. "Not happening." Her expression turned icy. "Then I'll report this to the board. You'll face fines, and if you don't comply, we'll take further action." I'd grinned. "Go for it." And she did. Soon, I was drowning in violation notices, fines, and even threats of lawsuits. They called my generator an eyesore and demanded its removal for aesthetic reasons. But here's the kicker. It wasn't illegal. I had all the permits, and more importantly, it was classified as critical infrastructure. Lydia didn't care. She was too caught up in her mission, too obsessed with controlling my property to see the bigger picture. She went door to door, rallying the HOA faithful, painting me as a neighborhood villain. Some bought her story. Others, like Tom, a retired firefighter and one of the few sane folks left, didn't. "She's on a rampage," Tom warned me one night, shaking his head. "Told my wife if your generator's hurting property values, I'd eat my hat." I chuckled. "Sounds about right." "She's nuts," he'd said bluntly. "That generator kept us warm during last winter's blackout. She can shove it." But Lydia wasn't about to back off. And that night, she made her biggest mistake yet. The older officer turned to her, arms crossed. "Ma'am," he said, voice dripping with exhaustion, "did you just call 911 to report the thing keeping emergency services running?" Lydia's mouth flapped open and shut, her face turning red as the truth sank in. "Two didn't know," she mumbled. The officer sighed. "Well, now you do." I bit back a grin as she stormed off, fuming, but I knew this wasn't the end. Lydia never quit. The next morning, I stepped outside to find a fresh violation notice taped to my door. "Unauthorized equipment, Do law 500 daily fine. I chuckled, shaking my head. She was doubling down. An hour later, Tom called. You see the new HOA rule? Yeah, I said, sipping my coffee. Lydia's lost it. She's got the board calling you a menace, he said, laughing. Says your industrial noise pollution is a hazard. I pinched my nose. And yet she was the first one begging for power during the blackout. Hypocrisy at its best, Tom said. What's your plan? I smirked. Oh, I've got something. That evening, 2 HOA lackeys showed up at my door, clipboards in hand, oozing self-importance. The taller one, a grumpy old guy, cleared his throat. Mr. Carter, your generator VYOLAT's our new policy. Shut it down now. I raised an eyebrow. You know it powers the emergency center, right? The other one, a weaselly guy named Greg, sniffed. Not our problem. Rules are rules. Non-compliance means legal action. I fought a laugh. Okay, let's go legal. They blinked. What? I've talked to my lawyer, I said, smirking. State law says HOAs can't touch critical infrastructure. Sue me, and I'll countersue for harassment and interference with emergency services. Their smugness evaporated. Greg stammered. We'll consult our legal team. I shrugged. Take your time. Look up the last HOA that tried this. They paid 6 figures. They scurried off, but I wasn't naive. Lydia wasn't done. The next day, I heard a tow truck rumble up. Wiping my hands on a rag, I stepped outside to see her marching up my driveway, clipboard in hand, a triumphant smirk on her face. A hired thug stood by the idling truck. We're here to remove your generator, she declared. I blinked. Excuse me. You ignored our notice, she said, smug as ever. It's HOA property now, and we're taking it at your expense. I exhaled, amused. You know this is theft, right? Her smirk faltered. It sits in HOA-ordered removal. I pulled out my phone. Guess I'd better call the cops and report a felony. Her face twitched. The tow guy coughed. Lady, if he calls the police, I'm out. She glared at him. You were hired to do a job, do it. He glanced at me, then her, shook his head, and drove off. Lydia's face turned purple. You haven't won, she hissed. You're a blight on this community, and I'll see you gone. I smirked. Good luck. The next day, a lawsuit landed on my doorstep. The HOA was suing me for public nuisance and VYOLATing bylaws. Tom stopped by, grinning. She really did it, huh? Oh yeah, I said. Spent a fortune on a lawyer to shut me down. He laughed. She's got more time than brains. But Lydia wasn't stopping there. She'd filed a city complaint claiming zoning violations, triggering an inspection, and even got the police back, this time for illegal power usage. She wanted me arrested. The following afternoon, a city inspector and 2 cops showed up. The taller cop sighed. We got a complaint about an unlicensed generator and power theft. I glanced across the street. Lydia was on her porch, grinning like she'd won. I smirked. She had no idea. Go ahead, I told the inspector. I've got nothing to hide. They checked permits, noise levels, everything. After 30 minutes, the inspector nodded. All good. It's permitted and registered as emergency infrastructure. The cop added, it powers dispatch and medical services. He turned to me. Sorry for the trouble, sir. Then he faced Lydia. Ma'am, filing false reports wastes our time. This is your second strike. One more, and we'll charge you. Her jaw dropped. But no buts, the cop snapped. This is harassment. Final warning. I waved at her. Have a nice day, Lydia. She stomped inside, humiliated. That night, my lawyer called, laughing. The city countered the HOA's lawsuit for interfering with emergency services. It's dismissed, and they're fining the HOA for harassment. I grinned. Beautiful. And he added, they're investigating the HOA for misusing funds. Lydia's drained their cash on this nonsense. The next morning, a city notice went up. HOA under financial VYEW. Fine suspended. Lydia paced her driveway, yelling into her phone. By evening, the board ousted her. She'd gone too far, and they blamed her for everything. A week later, my lawyer called again. Lydia's suit's toast, and the HOA's paying you do lot $20,000 for harassment. When the check arrived, I couldn't believe it. She tried to ruin me, and now I was cashing in. Better yet, she had to sell her house to cover the HOA's losses after funneling funds to her lawyer. A for sale sign went up, and soon she was gone. The new HOA thanked me, even offered me a stipend to keep my generator running as their emergency consultant. I took it sweet revenge. Months later, Lydia called, begging for help with her new, stricter HOA. I laughed. No way. You made your bed. She got EY'd soon after, broke and powerless, leaving in a cheap apartment. At a barbecue, Tom asked, "Think she learned her lesson?" I smirked. Not a chance. But she was gone, and I'd won. Did she deserve it? Should I have helped her? Will she try again? I say she had it coming in. If she's smart, she'll stay gone. What do you think?